Some losses don't make sense, and you never fully heal. We're going to get into it. Let's get it. Welcome. First of all, welcome. This is Unsolicited Perspectives. I'm your host, Bruce Anthony, here to lead the conversation in important events and topics that are shaping today's society. Join the conversation and follow us wherever you get your audio podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for our video podcast, YouTube exclusive content, and our YouTube membership. Rate, review, like, comment, share. Share with your friends, share with your family, hell, even share with your enemies. On today's episode, I'll be talking with Jane O about the unimaginable loss of a child and what it means to find meaning, connection, and purpose after that kind of heartbreak. But that's enough of the intro. Let's get to the show. Today's conversation is a heavy one, but it's also an important one. Some losses in life are unexpected. They're painful, but they follow a rhyme we understand. And then there are losses that break the natural order of things. The loss of a child is one of those losses. It's the kind of grief many of us hope we never have to understand. And because most of us won't experience it firsthand, it becomes invisible, hard to talk about, hard to sit with, easy to look away from. But today, we're not going to look away. Jane O is the founder of Healing Hearts Child Loss Support Group, a peer-led community created to support parents navigating life after the death of a child. Her work has been a lived experience from the unimaginable loss of her son. What she built isn't about moving on. It's about creating space where grief can be witnessed without judgment, where parents don't have to pretend they're okay, where community replaces isolation. This conversation isn't about fixing pain. It's about understanding it. It's about compassion for a loss that may not be comparable to anything else, and recognizing that even if we don't share that experience, we can share empathy. So today we're going to talk about child loss, about marriage and identity after tragedy, about the silence that follows funerals, and about how meaning and connection can still grow around lifelong grief. And without further ado, here's Jane O. As I said at the top, I'm here with Jane O. She is the founder of Healing Hearts Child Loss Support Group. We're going to be talking about something that's important, not only for people who have actually gone through this, but for people that know people who have gone through this, or not even knowing people that has gone through this. Just something to put into your sphere to let you think about how other people live or what they've experienced and have empathy for them. So Jane, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, telling us your story, telling us your work. This is an important conversation, and I'm glad that we're having it.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce, for having me and giving me the opportunity to speak about my journey.
Yes. It's my pleasure. Now, I start off every interview with let's go back. Let's go back to the beginning. Before we get into the work that you've done, the losses that you've experienced, can you take me back to who you were before all of that? What shaped you? What grounded you? What type of person were you becoming?
So before my life changed, because now there's two parts of my life, the before and the after. Mm-hmm. I'm obviously not the same person I was, after what's happened to me. I had a very beautiful life. I have a wonderful, physician husband who I'm very proud of. We went through professional school together, and I had a tremendous career and just a normal life that I really took for granted, And I'm a child of an immigrant. My parents came to America 30 years ago and, brought us to U.S. And, we were disciplined and we worked really hard to achieve that American dream. Mm-hmm. I became a dentist and, went through financial hardship of paying off my loans and, building a practice and, all of that, and built a beautiful family. And I was at the top of my game. I think I was at the top of my world. I mean, I'm 47 I will be turning 48 actually in March. So wow, I'm almost 50 years old, you know?
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And I have to say my 30s were really hard because that's when I lost my son. You know, I left him at a daycare and he died in daycare. And it was any ordinary day that you were just gonna have. Like I had friends over, we were having a great brunch, and they left, and I was cleaning up the kitchen, and I get a phone call saying, "Your son stopped breathing." So I ran to the emergency room that day and just watched him die right before my eye. I mean, it's the most, it's the most difficult thing that you can ever see is being helpless as a parent to know that it's completely out of control, right? You know, even if I was on my knees and hands begging the doctors to save him. And they did try for an hour to get him back, but ultimately, you know, they had to say it was done. I mean, they couldn't save his life. I saw the emergency room doctor slamming his fist on the table and just walking away in despair, you know, because there's nothing like losing a child. And the result was that he died of SIDS. But we're really not sure because the autopsy report came back as, you know, he had viral pneumonia. But they don't really like to even label SIDS anymore. They don't, you know, if they find like a little bit of, like, he was sick with a cold, so, you know, they labeled it as viral pneumonia. But I don't know why the term became like almost like political. Like they try not to diagnose that as SIDS anymore. So
You learn something new every day. I
yeah,
didn't know that.
right?
So take me back, and this is always a touchy subject, the loss of a child. I just want to go back to the beginning of meeting your husband, having a family, and you have another child as well.
Yes.
Just walk me through that process of, because you said you were on top of the world
Yeah.
professionally and personally.
Yes.
Take me to the process of building the family.
Well, you know, we really struggled, right, to get through school because it was so hard. And, you know, my husband and I did long distance for 4 years while we were in professional school. I was in California. I went to Loma Linda University. So I was there, and he was in Illinois. He was in an MD PhD program, which is, you know, really hard, but it helped pay for his medical school tuition. And I came out with, you know, a lot of debt. And, you know, it was a struggle to pay that off. So we actually put off having our family because I wanted to make sure that he got through his training, and I wanted to make sure that, you know, I was successful and that I was paying down my debt. And, you know, that's what I did. I worked really hard. And, you know, the funny thing is when we first got married, we didn't even want to have children, you know? But then when I entered my 30s and, you know, I had a great career, that was really hard to give up too, because, you know, as a woman, you just have that biological clock that you feel like, okay, if you don't do this now, like you might miss that opportunity. So when I had Jimmy, my oldest, I was 34. So I don't feel like I was super young, but I wasn't super old. So I had my baby, and my God, I'm telling you, Bruce, when I saw that baby, it's just like that kind of love you can't even imagine, you know. And if you believe in God, I felt like, wow, this is how God loves us. That's what I felt like looking at your child, and it was such a gift. And I embraced that motherhood. I mean, even my mom said, my God, like you love your career so much, but for you to even want to go down to part-time or wanting to quit, I mean, she found that to be like amazing that I was willing to give up my career for my child. And I did go down to part-time, but, you know, I was hesitant about having another baby because I didn't want to give up my career all the way. So there was still that ambition. And I did have Alexander 5 years down the road because I was approaching 40, and I was like, oh my gosh, my biological clock is ticking. And by then my husband had become partner, and he was, you know, making great income. Like he was really successful. So I decided that I'm just gonna cut back in dentistry completely. And I wanted to be home to my two boys. So yeah, so I had the second baby, and what I did learn is, you know, you can't really time life. You just can't. What I'm learning is that there's never a right time to have a family. there's never a right time to build a business. You just have to do it, when you feel that it needs to get done. Because I regretted having my second baby so long, because after he died, I started on IVF right away.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the fertility that I did. And, with that pregnancy came a lot of complication. I ended up having to, cut out an ovary because a cyst grew with it. So when he died, before he died, when I was giving birth to him, I told the doctor, just do the salpingectomy, which is where they cut the fallopian tube. So I sterilized myself because I decided that I didn't want to have more babies. I was getting too old, and I was having complications with the pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
That's another mistake I made, was just doing something that was irreversible, a procedure. But you never know the future. So here I had a dead child, and I don't have my fertility anymore. So the only option was to do an IVF journey. And I think that was a distraction, because that was my way of getting through the grief, right? And I am telling you right now, I have a whole new respect for women who are going through infertility, because I have been on both sides of the fences, where I was able to get pregnant very easily. I never even thought about that. It just, as soon as I was off the pill, I'm pregnant, right? So, and then there's a whole, population of women who struggle with this. And here I was now doing this horrific journey where I'm injecting myself with all kind of hormones. But in reality, what I was trying to do was I was trying to bring back my son. Okay. But you can never bring back the child you lost. I don't care if you have 10 children, you lose one, it doesn't replace the one that you lost. Ultimately, the IVF failed. I miscarried all 4 embryos, 2 years of doing it. So I was grieving, and I'm doing IVF, and spent $130,000 because, IVF is very expensive.
It's expensive and very, taxing physically,
Yes.
correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
because
it's not an easy process for most men out there. They're like, what's the big deal? You just get a shot. No, if
no,
you've known anybody that goes through it, it is very physically taxing.
it is, because for women, it's extremely invasive, because you have to go under so that they can retrieve your eggs.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing this at one of the world's best fertility clinic. It was called Colorado, Institute of Reproductive, CCRM. And Dr. Schoolcraft was amazing. He will get all the Hollywood stars pregnant, right? This is how desperate I was. And, he looked at me and said, I'm sorry, but your, AMH level is so low, which is like the egg count.
Mm-hmm.
And he said women's fertility just drops after 40. And he recommended that I use donor eggs. But, after 2 years of doing it, I didn't have the energy anymore, and it was weird, looking through lists of women that was supposed to look like me. It's like looking at a dating site. And I'm trying to look for women that had my weight, my height, but then they would take that woman's egg, and then they would put it with my husband's sperm and impregnate, put it inside my uterus, because I still have good uterus. It's just my eggs were bad. And when I thought about that, I just decided, maybe it's just not meant to be at that point. So yeah. I was just tired.
Instead of OK Cupid, it was OK Donor. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Exactly. It was OK Donor.
So you're going through all of this.
Yeah.
And was there a moment where, and maybe not right away, because you said this was 2 years after the fact that you're going through this, but when was that moment?
So no, it was right after he passed, I was doing IVF.
Oh, wow. So
yes,
there was not a whole lot of time passed, but you were doing IVF for 2 years.
Yes.
Yes. So in that 2-year process, when was the moment that hit you, or was it afterwards when you realized that you might be able to turn this grief into the ability to help other parents going through the same thing?
You know what? No, it didn't. That didn't hit me until 8 years into my journey.
Wow.
I did my journey alone, because I'm South Korean, and my parents, they still don't speak English very well, right? So there is but I speak Korean very fluently, because I came when I was 9, and I had no choice but to, have my language intact. Otherwise, I can't communicate with them. Now, my parents are very, they're immigrant parents, but they still haven't assimilated to American culture, because, they have very hard work ethic, but they're also very stoic. And, my brother and sister, there's 3 of us, and they're also dentists. So, they have achieved the American dream in our Asian society because, we have very hard work ethic. They push education very hard. And then suddenly you have a daughter who had lost a child, and then it's become like a stigma, right? And it's become a shameful thing because nobody, like the relatives, they didn't know that I had lost a child because that's something that they didn't want to talk about. My parents came and decided that there should be no trace of Alexander. Like they said, it was bad luck. They got rid of all the pictures. They took out his picture, and they wanted me to be the same person that I was. They couldn't
Could
accept that.
could those actions have caused the 8-year journey? Had you had a little bit more support, not to say you ever get over it,
Yeah.
but would the grief had lasted that long? There's a difference between grief and remembrance, right? Like we remember the loved ones that we lose, that never goes away. The grief doesn't stick with you every day. And eventually at a certain point, the grief of a lost loved one will come and go based on moments that remind you of a time.
Mm-hmm.
During that process of 8 years, was the grief every single day? And if so, did ignoring that or doing away with Alexander's stuff kind of make it so that it would last for 8 years?
I think that the grief just never left. I think I was in denial. I told myself that I was over it and I had moved on with my life. We packed up from Illinois and moved back to Washington State. This is where I grew up for the most of my life. And, I think, the Korean culture is in a way that it's Confucius. Like it's filial piety. It's all about respecting the elder. We carry our grief very differently. We carry it with dignity and silence. And so for me to try to blend that with the Western culture of being open about it, it was hard because you have to integrate both of it. I think the grief, you never quite heal from something like this. But you learn to carry it.
Yeah.
Okay. And I didn't even understand what carrying that meant. And, I lost my career as a dentist as a result of this. I couldn't practice dentistry anymore. I wasn't in line with my career. I don't think I was even mentally stable to go back and take care of the patients. I lost my career. That resulted in loss of who I was as a person. So here I was watering my garden one day, my new house, and I started crying because I realized that, not only did I lose my son, but I also lost who I was. I didn't even know who I was at that point. But I was still trying to live a life somehow. I was trying to survive, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And then I ran into one of the moms, like, somebody called and said, hey, can you reach out to this mom? Because, she's also Korean, but she's had no one to talk to for 13 years about losing her son. So I did, and we started crying. We FaceTimed because she was in California, and she said, Jane, you're the first mom that I have talked to. And I felt like there was something so broken in our culture where we shouldn't have to do this journey alone. So that was a catalyst. That was the moment I knew that I wanted to do something more meaningful with our loss, because I realized even after 8 years, that sadness was always going to be there. But I also learned that it's okay because grief is love that has nowhere to go. Okay?
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. And I decided that, okay, it has nowhere to go, but I wanted to build it a home for it to go. So that's when I decided to create my Healing Hearts community, because I didn't want to do this journey alone, and I felt like no parent should.
Right.
It's a load that we can carry together. And it just makes it more bearable when you have that community. And I wish I had known that. I wish somebody had told me, you need a peer group. You need that support. Because I had never gone counseling. I never had a peers. I didn't even feel like I had the right to grieve in a way, because I lost my child at 5 months. And that there are parents who've lost older children. And my mom has said that to me. She said, well, you didn't have that relationship with your son, so how can you be grieving that hard?
I you know, that a lot of people are going to listen to that and say, "How could a mother ever say that?" But I'm not super familiar with the Korean community, but I am familiar with my own community, and there is in certain communities here in America where you are taught to suffer in silence. I could just say it from a male's point of view, right? From a male's point of view, we are taught as little boys, when you fall and bump your knee, don't start crying, be a
Mhm.
man. And
Mhm.
and you suppress dealing with pain. And that's anytime you got to suppress something, that's not good. You need to deal with it
But we were
head
taught that.
first.
We were
Yes,
taught
we
that
were
from a
taught.
young age that when you fall and you scrape your knee, you don't cry about it. You get up and you just keep going.
Yes.
And that's the problem in our culture is that they are trying to fix our grief. You know, but the thing that people don't realize is grief has to be witnessed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I actually read about a village in Australia when somebody dies, the whole villager goes in their house and change things around their house. Why? That's witnessing somebody's grief to say your life has changed forever.
Hmm. That's interesting. Well, okay. So you're dealing with this all alone,
Yeah.
but there's still a funeral where everyone shows love and recognizes in that day your pain. What did the silence of the house feel like, and what support disappeared faster than you expected?
Well, the silence of the house is just numbing,
Mm.
and then you realize that time is just frozen for us. And it's like I don't even know why the world kept going. I was wondering like how could the sky get dark? Like why is, it's like every morning I would wake up and I would realize I lost him all over again. And that your body almost like feels that until your emotions catch up in the morning. And the support fades away pretty fast, I'm going to tell you, because people are not comfortable with it. They don't know what to say. And I don't even think it's because people are being cruel. They just don't understand that. And let me give you a clear example of that. It's like asking for a direction from people who've never left their home.
Mm.
Okay. And, it's not because that they're cruel, but they don't know what to say. And when they don't know what to say and they don't contact you, you feel that isolation. You feel that they're pushing you away and you're being abandoned. You don't feel seen at that point. And I think part of it is because they're confronted with their own fragility in life and it's so uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Because I never thought about death until I lost my son. I didn't think a normal day would turn into that kind of event, that catastrophic, because it is catastrophic. Your whole life is changed.
Thought about death at all, or death like that?
I think a death like that is unnatural, right? Because you're not supposed to bury your child before you. And when
Yes.
you lose a child, I feel it's not a competition, obviously, because any loss is traumatic and it's sad. But to lose a child, I feel is different because that's an extension of you. Your child came from your inside, and when they die, part of you have died.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so at this moment, you just felt alone. And then you said that things were stripped of the house that would have you remember your son. So, what is your daily routine? What are you doing each day? Because you don't have your
I
career anymore. You can't
no.
work.
So it's interesting because I think the first 5 years I was in a fog.
Hmm.
Uh, I think I don't even remember if I got up. I remember brushing my teeth and just saw tears falling down, and I didn't even know where the tears were coming from. You know,
Yeah.
and it's really like the worst feeling.
Yeah.
It's it's like you are so lonely. I think the loneliness was the worst part of it.
Yeah.
That no one can understand that that depth of despair and that longing and that yearning for your child. I mean, my arms just felt so empty, that I couldn't, he was not there anymore. It was a shock of it.
Mm-hmm.
And to know that your future is gone, because when you lose your parent, you talk about all the things they've accomplished, or, people who are older, but when your child dies, like, your future has died. Like, what you could have been as a parent, what the potential that they had, like, those are all stripped of you. And then people tell you, you're very strong. No, I'm not strong. I don't have a choice. What they don't see is the ache and the joy that you constantly have. At every milestone, you have that joy. Like, I have friends whose sons get married, their daughters get married. But you know what? They carry that sadness that same day because they know that somebody that should be there is not there.
Mm-hmm.
It's carrying that together all the time. I feel intense joy. I do. But I feel that more because I know what grief feels like. But would I ever take this grief away? No, because I loved. My grief stems from the deepest love because I have loved so deeply.
Wow, thank you for sharing that with me. And with us, all of us. This is, like I said at the top, this is a really important conversation, and people are going to, they're going to feel. You just had me feel. I'm about to start crying on here. We're going to be two people crying together on this podcast. Let's get to, we'll get more into this, but let's take a kind of a breather and get to your work, because after 8 years, there was a moment where Healing Hearts and the idea of it came to mind. And it seems like it stemmed from talking to the other woman who had gone through the exact same thing that you had.
Yes. So that work came, so during that 5 years, I want to tell you, okay, I was, an amazing dentist. Like, I loved serving my community. And then I knew that I was still had a lot of talent. And, I was a classical violinist. Like, that was my major in college, so all the discipline I took, playing the violin is not easy to do it well because it takes a lot of hours of practice and discipline. I actually took my music major and applied for dental school. So, and they thought that was kind of cool because they usually have science majors, and here I'm coming in with a music degree. When my career ended, because I decided that it was not in alignment with who I was, I wanted to spend my day, as a mother to my remaining son. Because you know what, Bruce? I'm not going to lay in my bed wishing that I had done one more root canal. Because I realized, I realized my time with my family was more precious, because I realized that tomorrow is not guaranteed anymore. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to see my remaining son grow up. I wanted to be at home when I pick him up. I wanted to be in every aspect of his life. I don't think he likes it because he's a teenager now, and he loves it when I'm gone. but, I wanted to be present. Mm-hmm. So what I did was I watched the stock market because I just really like reading the market news, and I didn't even know what NASDAQ or Dow Jones or any of that was. But then I noticed the graph, and I'm very analytical too. And I was like, you know what? That kind of mirrors my grief, the ups and downs of the market, right? Like the volatility, the part that it's out of control. And grief is like that. It comes in waves. Like there's stretches of like great days, like the market, like market's running really high. And then there's days like it's falling so bad, right? And you have no control. And I just felt like it mirrored my life and my grief. So I decided to study it, and I ventured into it. So I just invested. Like I didn't day trade. I, learned about the market. I understood the endurance and just having the patience of it, just like my grief. And I ended up building like a 7-figure portfolio over time.
Okay.
And yeah, and I decided, when I started this organization, what a great way to fund my own charity, I thought. What a meaningful way to turn my grief into something that's purposeful. Because when you honor your loved ones, that is what you want to do, is give back to the community, turn the grief into a meaningful work, and turn that love into light for other people. I don't want to be the brightest burning candle, right? I want to be the longest burning candle that's going to light all the parents along my pathway, because I didn't want somebody to do the journey alone like I did. I needed to be the person 8 years ago for me, for somebody else. That was my goal. And I found the pageant system, which was interesting because I am running for the state pageant for the title.
Okay.
And I decided it's not for status. It was a way, if I win the title, I feel like it will be a microphone to let people know, hey, there is underserved group of parents who don't have that support. Truly, we don't. Like, even in my community, there's nowhere for these people to go. They come to my meetings twice a month. I open up my home, and it's such a loving environment for us. It's healing. It's incredibly sacred space because these people are sharing their most vulnerable stories, and I am honored to witness their grief for them.
And that's different, right? A peer-to-peer organization is different.
Yes.
When people have actually experienced a loss as opposed to people who just studied it.
Yes, absolutely.
Where do you see that maybe the two can meet? Because there are people that have been through it that can speak to something that people that haven't, but then there's the other aspect of the mental health, the psychology of it, whereas other people may have not gone to med school or study psychology, and you could, not to say that your group has this, okay, not to say that at all, but there could be a situation where you have people that have experienced certain things talking to each other and don't know what the hell they're talking about. Like, we experience that a lot here in America anyway.
Yes.
But understanding that, the peer-to-peer is so vital because you need people there to have experienced
It is,
what
because
you have.
when we're in the same room, we don't have to say anything. Like, we could sit there in silence and completely understand that grief. But at the same time, I don't want people leaving my meeting feeling worse either, right? Because that's not the goal. Okay. So, we encourage each other. We always try to carry that hope because we loved our children. And it's a nice space to be able to talk about it and not have judgment. It's a safe space. It's inclusive. Grief doesn't care if you're rich or poor, what color you are, And I have decided that I have hired a therapist actually to help me with facilitating the meeting once a month. And, we have I did it twice a month because I don't want somebody to go too long without a meeting, if they just can't. And the reason why I decided to hire a therapist is because, one, I wanted her to equip us with tools on how to handle certain situations. Because, sometimes I'm embarrassed to say, but if I'm in a grocery store and I hear certain music that brings back memories of my son, I might just break down. And then I learned how to do like box breathing, So, I just feel like every parent needs to be equipped with tools to handle difficult situations, or how to respond when somebody tells you to get over it. And we hear that all the time, get over it. When they tell me get over it, I ask them, how long is my child going to be dead for?
Go ahead. Let them know, right? Like, because everybody got an opinion about something that they've never gone through. You sent me you're working on a book, and you sent me a chapter. Now, first of all, let me just say, as I was reading the chapter, I fancied myself as a writer. My first major in college was journalism, and I wrote for the school newspaper, and I thought that I was a creative writer. My sister has a degree in film, director, editor, wrote a screenplay, the whole nine. The chapter that you sent me was so good. And its descriptions, the painting of the moments, the painting of the day, I could smell and feel everything that you were describing in this chapter. And I'm not going to say it brought me to tears, but there were some moments that I had to take a deep breath because it was very emotional.
Yeah.
And in this chapter, you talk about how the chapter is based on you and your experience. you and your husband
Yeah.
start passing each other like ghosts, both grieving but unable to reach one another. What does this type of grief do to a marriage when both people are drowning in that grief?
You know, so many marriages don't survive that. I'm going to be honest with you. A lot of marriages can't, because the reality is marriage is hard. It's not just bed of roses, right? I've been married for 21 years. And, you know, there's times when marriage is just stressful, even when you don't have a loss like this. But when you have a loss like this, I mean, it's just a bomb, right? And even though we both had this, we're both carrying the same grief and this shared experience, it was still very lonely because no two people grieve the same way. It's like having snowflakes. It's born out of the same storm, but each snowflake is so unique. And my husband grieved in a very different way than I did. And the best example of that is two people are on a mountain. You know, your legs are broken. You're looking at each other like, yeah, our legs are broken. Like, how are we going to get down? We chose to stay on that mountain together.
Okay. First of all, congratulations on 21 years of marriage.
Thank you.
You got a birthday and 21 years of marriage. It's a big deal.
And a pageant, and we have a trip to France coming up. So yes, lots of good
got
things.
a lot of things going on. So congratulations to all of that. So as you guys are both going through this and passing each other as ghosts and dealing with grief your own ways, as you're internalizing your grief, and he's probably doing the exact same thing of internalizing his grief. He's probably thinking, I need to be strong for her.
Yes.
And avoiding everything that he needs to deal with. What type of complications did that cause, and how did you guys work your way through it?
You know, at one point I remember screaming at him and I said, I gave birth to him. I hurt more than you. And that was probably not the right way to deal with it, but that's what happens. Like, you start to say that your grief is bigger, because I felt like that, you know, he was grieving so hard, but he was not letting me in. And at some point I wanted to move on, but I felt like he was wanting to hang on to that. Like, for example, I wanted to put all this baby stuff away and he didn't want to.
Well, I thought you said your family did that and that you were a little hesitant when they
that
did
was with
that.
the photos. So when he passed, you know, we had like, you know, his play stuff and like his bouncer and all of that. And, you know, after just looking at that and with no baby in it, I just wanted to put it away in the basement. And my husband was very hesitant. Like, he did not want to, but he's not home. I'm home most of the day. So I put it away without his consent. And then, you know, when I moved back to Washington, we had pictures of the baby. My parents wanted to take that down, you know? So so that's what happened. But yeah, it's hard because we had to work through, you know, that kind of emotions, and then IVF failing. I mean, it was really hard on the marriage, like to go through fertility treatment, like, you know, I have friends whose marriages don't work out because they've lost a child. It's very common to see that. You either grow together or you're going to stick together, or you decide to go separate ways. And I've seen affairs happen. Because people deal with it in an unhealthy way, you know?
I would just say that your husband loves you a great deal, because if my wife had told me, you don't love my baby as much as I love my baby, I would have been like, excuse me? That is my baby too. But that's also the reason why, ladies and gentlemen, I've been divorced for over 13 years. So anyway, so what was it that you guys finally realized? I mean, you yelled at him. Did something snap for him? Was there counseling involved? Because how do you deal with the grief, the individual grief that you have? You also have another child and still work on this marriage at the same time. Because I was explaining to people last week on the podcast that a friend of mine is getting a divorce. They've known this person for 20 years, very similar to your situation. And I said, why are you getting a divorce? It was like, I matured and grew as a person, and this person did not. They're still the same person that I married. I'm not. And so you're just dealing with the grief of a loss of a child, being parents, and then also you guys are also growing up. You're
Yes.
going from 20 to 30 to then your 40s.
Yeah.
So you yell at him, he snaps out of it. What was the work after that?
You know, growth is never linear, right?
Mm.
It's never linear. I mean, I wish it can say it's straight up, but it doesn't work like that. And I think through the process, we realize that grief changes over time, just like relationship. It doesn't get any easier, but it does get softer over time. And what really made me realize that I wanted to stay with my husband was he was half of what I had lost.
Mhm.
Okay. He's half of my son. And he's the only person in the world who is going to understand the depth of my love because he loved our son just as much. And when I realized that he really is the mirror image that I was looking at, then it made me realize that I could never live without him.
Mhm.
And that I appreciated that he was building that stable foundation for me.
Yeah.
And I was the advocate for this family. Like all the work I'm doing for my nonprofit, I couldn't have done it without him. He's silent partner, but he's there holding me.
Mhm.
You know, and I truly appreciate that because now I realize that marriage isn't just about, you know, the initial excitement. You know, you grow through that. You know, you live really, truly, it is for better or for worse. You know, and it's so hard. It's a commitment. It's a discipline. It's endurance to stay in it together. But the reward is great if you can make it through that.
Yeah.
And I know that he carries my son's DNA.
Mhm.
And when I look at him, I see my son there. Yeah.
For someone listening to this who loves a grieving parent but doesn't know what to say, what does real support actually look like in the months and years after a loss like this?
I'm going to tell you, the greatest mind cannot touch a broken heart or bleeding heart. It just can't. Only love and faith and hope can touch that. And if someone can sit there and tell you, I don't know what you're going through, but I'm willing to sit here and cry with you and be present for you, is all we want. We don't need a silver lining. We just need to know that you're going to be present for us. When the casseroles stop coming, I need to know that you're still going to be in my life. I already lost a child. I don't need to lose my friends too.
Right. But on a side note, no tuna casseroles. If you can bring some casserole, no tuna casseroles.
I do love casseroles.
In that beautiful chapter that you sent to me, there was a moment where I had to step away. And that moment is when your son
Yeah.
asks, when is his little brother going to wake up? How do you even begin to explain death to a child when you're having trouble processing it yourself?
I remember sitting in the emergency room, holding my son, you know, his lifeless body, and just unable to let him go, right? And I looked at my husband and I said, what do we tell Jimmy? He loves his brother. Like, what are we going to tell him tonight when we get home that his brother's not coming back? I think that was the most broken feeling I ever had, to know that, to tell my other child who I loved so much, to tell him that his brother wasn't coming home. And I don't even have an answer for that, right? And, you know, at the funeral, I remember Jimmy holding Alexander saying, Mommy, like, why is he so cold? Like, you know, why isn't he moving? Jimmy was 5. And what do you tell that child? I mean, he just started his life, but now he has encountered death.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, all I could do was say, we'll see him again one day. You know, the only thing I could tell him was, I can't explain it, but we will meet your brother one day again.
when that conversation, when Jimmy got older, what was that conversation like? And what has it been like for Jimmy? Have you had those type of conversations with Jimmy to live in the shadow of a brother who has passed away?
You know, it's funny because he's very private about that. Like he doesn't
Mm.
tell even his friends that he had a brother.
Mm-hmm.
He does have a stuffed animal that my friends had made for me with Alexander's pajamas that he
Mm.
always keeps with him.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's funny because when I'm being bad, you know, he's more mature than I am sometimes. He's like, Mom, like, you're not going to go to heaven and you're not going to be able to see Alexander, okay, if you act that
Jesus. Come on, Jimmy.
way. Yeah. So, you know, he's giving me a lecture, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I'm really, really proud of my son because he's well adjusted 13-year-old boy. I mean, he gets straight A's, you know, and he's so well rounded. He's a great violinist and he's got a lot of friends. I mean, he's doing advanced math but you know, I don't really expect. I have a different priority now. I don't look at my son and think, "Oh, I need you to be a doctor. I need you to be a judge. Like I need you to be high achieving." I don't really care. At this point, I want him to live longer than me.
Mm.
Outlive me. And I
Mm-hmm.
want him to be healthy and happy. Like for me, it's not just about achieving success anymore. My priorities are just different when I look at that. It's not about getting into Ivy League. It's not about, you know, achieving straight A's. Like the mental health, being grounded, having integrity, just being a good person and please like live longer than your parents because I don't think I can deal with another loss like that. I just can't imagine.
Ooh, that leads me to a really interesting question that I just thought of. Do you think the grief taught you that the successes weren't as important as love and happiness? Like the reason why I ask that question is because a lot of times we set these goals for ourselves as people, not even just adults, as a people,
Yeah.
and say, I want to accomplish this goal. And you accomplish a goal and you don't really reflect on it, there's another goal. And you realize that even though you're accomplishing these goals, that you're not completely satisfied. So my question is, do you think that grief showed you that love and happiness is more important than the actual goals that we wish to attain, if those goals are not giving us that?
I think so because I used to think, oh, you know, if I could just become a successful dentist, like, you know, I never thought at this point in my life, I thought I would have multiple dental practices and I'd be building an empire. I didn't think I would be, you know, building a support group because I have a bigger vision than just this meeting in my living room. I want
Mm-hmm.
to actually build a scalable model where I can implement this into other communities. I'm using my group as a test model right now, using my scientific brain to figure out what's working and what's not, and building a facilitation manual. Because when I first started, I didn't know how to carry out a meeting, but now I do. There is a
Mm-hmm.
certain structure that really works. And if I can actually get it into a, a format like a cookbook, I feel like yeah, I can implement this into other communities and build leaders that can, you know, make it grow. So my vision is so much greater than my mission is greater than even my loss. This isn't even about like my loss, right? This is
Mm-hmm.
about telling everybody else's story. So
Helping others. Your
yes,
loss
yes,
led to you helping others.
absolutely. Yes. And yeah, so I don't believe that even though I have achieved a financial success, it felt empty for me, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It felt hollow because I wanted to, you know, do something with the achievement that was meaningful to honor my son. Because when I do see him one day in heaven, I imagine telling him that I have loved him all my life and that I have lived my best life by serving my community.
Mm.
And that was how I honored him.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
always tell people money doesn't give you happiness. Money will put a down payment on happiness, though. It
Hey,
will put it down.
money will give you a nice place to sit and cry, though.
Yeah, it will. Money won't give you happiness. It'll give you
Yes,
a down payment on happiness. But the true path to happiness is purpose.
yes. Finding the meaning.
Yes, purpose and meaning. You find that inner peace that you're looking for. When people walk away from your meetings with Healing Hearts or even this conversation,
Yeah.
what do you hope they carry with them about grief, about love, and the possibility of meaning or purpose after loss?
Grief is not something that you should be ashamed of. That's an evidence of your love.
Mm-hmm.
So I would tell people that it's something that you carry with you. Like I take the grief in as a light into my heart. And to me, it's joy that I carry now instead of just the sadness, because grief isn't about being sad. It's about, honoring the ones that you love. It's saying that their life mattered. So make your life matter for them.
Mm.
And, live your life. Find something that you're passionate about. But know that it's okay to be happy. Give yourself permission to be happy.
And give yourself permission to grieve and to be sad.
Yes, and also, use that to find meaning. I believe that that's the sixth stage of actually grieving, is when you do find meaning. Okay, because when you find meaning, you don't suffer as much, because I don't tolerate meaningless suffering.
Huh. You just added a sixth. I thought it was the 5 stages of grief. You just added a 6th stage to the grief model.
Yes.
Jane, I want to thank you so much for coming on this show, being open, being honest, being sincere, and teaching, letting us into your life. And I know that this conversation has touched a lot of people. I'm telling y'all, when the book come out, whoo, I'm telling you, I read that first chapter and it was intense and good. And I wish you nothing but the success in that. But more importantly, this conversation was important and I know it's going to touch a lot of people. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Bruce. And, stay in touch with me, okay?
I definitely will.
Okay.
What you just heard is one of the conversations that will sit with you. Because child loss is the kind of grief most of us pray we never have to understand. And that's exactly why so many parents who live with it end up carrying it alone. Not because people are cruel, but because people don't know what to say. And silence can feel like abandonment. Jane came on here and did something rare. She let us witness it. She talked about her life having a before and an after, about the day that started like any other day, brunch with friends, cleaning the kitchen, and then one phone call that changed everything. She told us what it felt like to run to the hospital, to watch the chaos of the doctors fighting for her son's life, and to face that moment that no parent should ever face. And then she took us into what happens after the world stops for you, but keeps moving for everybody else. She described the numbing silence of the house, how support fades faster than people realize, how grief can make time feel frozen, waking up each morning and losing them all over again. She also gave language to something so many people never say out loud. Grief doesn't just take the person you lost. Sometimes it takes you too. She lost her son. And in many ways, she lost the version of herself that existed before that day. Her career, her identity, her sense of safety in the world. It all shifted. We talk about what this kind of grief does to a marriage, how even when 2 people are carrying the same loss, they can still feel miles apart. But we also talked about what it looks like to keep choosing each other through it, to understand that for better or worse, isn't poetry, it's endurance. And for anyone listening who has ever worried they'll say the wrong thing to someone grieving, Jane made it real plain and simple. You don't need the perfect words. You don't need silver lining. You just need presence. The kind of presence that doesn't disappear when casseroles stop coming, even if they tuna casseroles. The kind that says, I don't know what to say, but I'm not going anywhere. She even gave us a line I'm not going to forget. Grief has to be witnessed, and she's building a home for it. That's what Healing Hearts is, a peer-led community where parents don't have to perform strength. don't have to move on, don't have to carry the load by themselves. Jane's turning love that was nowhere to go into something that could hold other people. And that is a purpose in its purest form. So if this episode moved you, don't just sit with it. Do something with it. Check on somebody. Stay present longer than the moment. And if you know a grieving parent, remember, you can't fix it, but you can witness it. And to Jane, thank you for trusting us with your story, your work, and your heart. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for watching. And until next time, as always, I'll holla. Woo! That was a hell of a show. Thank you for rocking with us here on Unsolicited Perspectives with Bruce Anthony. Now, before you go, don't forget to follow, subscribe, like, comment, and share our podcast wherever you're listening or watching it to it. Pass it along to your friends. If you enjoy it, that means the people that you rock with will enjoy it also. So share the wealth, share the knowledge, share the noise. And for all those people that say, well, I don't have a YouTube. If you have a Gmail account, you have a YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can actually watch our video podcast and YouTube exclusive content. But the real party is on our Patreon page, After Hours Uncensored and Talking Straight-ish. After Hours Uncensored is another show with my sister. And once again, the key word there is uncensored. Those are exclusively on our Patreon page. Jump onto our website at unsolicitedperspective.com for all things us. That's where you can get all of our audio, video, our blogs, and even buy our merch. And if you really feel generous and want to help us out, you can donate on our donations page. Donations go strictly to improving our software and hardware so we can keep giving you guys good content that you can clearly listen to and that you can clearly see. So any donation would be appreciative. Most importantly, I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for listening and watching and supporting us. And I'll catch you next time. Audi 5000. Peace.